Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video tour. In this tour we're going to be having a look through the second main area of capabilities added to the new versions 4.3 around properties, portfolio rules and navigation types. So here we're going to be looking from the Windows application, although actually quite a lot of the property things here relate to both interfaces equally well. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is creating new types of properties and aliasing them. So we can see here along the top of our property list here for our projects in the portfolio, we're in our full set portfolio, and we can see a range of projects here. We can see some properties data for them coming from the properties database. Some of these things are things that are created automatically by the system, like the plan start date and plan finish date. They're coming from the plan held for the project, and we're automatically looking at the first date and last date, the percentage complete of those, and we can also bring back other things like number of overdue tasks, things of that type. So those things are generated automatically by the system as soon as you have any planning data for that project. They have a sort of programmatic name with underscores in them normally, and we've now been able to put some aliases on this, so we can decide exactly what we'd like the display title for these things to be. It can be something completely different if you want to be, or you can just take out the underscores, or you can simplify them, because some of them are quite long programmatic names. So you can do that, and we'll have a look in a minute where we can do that. But we can also choose to bring extra data back from our plans now, and we can see some of these projects here are bringing back a baseline start and a baseline finish date, and they're also bringing back some information from particular tasks here. And that's also done through this new mechanism. So we have properties that we bring back from a range of different places. Let's go and explore that a little bit further. That's all done by an administrator in terms of setting up what you want to use here in other project property definitions. So just to recap quickly, in system project property definitions we have a database of the standard things that we want to collect for all of our projects, where we're going to expect people to enter that data through the interface. Other data is being collected automatically, like we discussed, from the planning system, from spreadsheets in projects, and that's all defined within the method templates in the projects themselves, and that data is brought through. Now we can apply here in other project properties some rules to all that to, if you like, intercept that data coming back from the projects and reformat it and present it before we use it elsewhere, and that's exactly what this form here is doing. So we can see that we now have these display aliases. So something which I'm really keen to use, like the plan risk rating residual not closed value that I'm bringing back from my risk register, which is the overall sum of all the not closed residual risks. I'm going to call it in my displays the project risk level. That's a much more concise and better understood term for it than this particular technical one. This one's very long because there are 3 or 4 different variants of this, but I've chosen this is the one I'm interested in, and I'm applying a number format to it and a display alias. So I can do that with those nice and easily. The other thing that's new here in this form is the ability to define these extra things from our tasks. So we've got a range of these down here at the bottom. And we can see in the form what's happening. So we're saying we're going to create a property called baseline_start with an alias of baseline start, and that data is going to come from the planning database for this project. It's going to go through all the tasks until it finds one called baseline start. It's going to then take the start date from that task and populate that into my baseline start field. And we're going to apply a number format to it, or a date format in this case. So we've got a date format applied to that. So what it's doing is, for each project, every time the plan is updated, as well as calculating automatically number of overdue tasks, start and end date, etc., it's also going to scan through the tasks till it finds the first one with the name baseline start. If you've got 3 tasks in there called baseline start, it's going to be the first one. If you've got no tasks in there called baseline start, the property will remain empty for that project. So very simple rule. It relies on you having standard naming conventions, but in practice many people template their plans into projects anyway. They already have, not the entire plan of course, but some of the key things they're going to use are already templated in. So you could template in some of these tasks or milestones so they're available to be picked up straight away. So that's what that's doing. Baseline start task is populating the baseline start field, and the finish one you can probably work out fairly quickly that it's doing the same sort of thing, but it's picking up a different end property. Now there are a range of different properties you can pick up from the identified task depending on what you want to do with it. Start date and end date, pretty obvious. We've got percentage complete as well. We could have a special task which is describing something that we're interested in, and we can therefore bring back the tag or the comment or the description from those tasks as well. So I've got a few of those set up here. And those are what are being populated into, we're just going to close that down, those are what are being populated into my project pick list here. So we can see some of these projects have got those tasks in, so they're being populated. Other projects don't have those tasks in, so they're not being populated. I deliberately chose a different date format to these, so they stood out as being different, but there's nothing to stop us having them in exactly the same date format if we want to. And we've got some tasks obviously coming back over here with some of that other field data as well. So this really expands massively what you can do in terms of bringing things back from plans. Features specifically asked for by customers who have very templated plans with particular dates, on-site dates for example. You want to know when the projects are going to be on site, or when you're going to particular licenses are required, etc. So you can put those tasks in, pull those dates back, and they can then be used for reporting and also for portfolio rules, as we're going to see in a minute. So that's very useful extension of the way the portfolio system works already, and property system works already. So the other thing we wanted to have a look at was changes to reporting of these. So we're going to go off and have a look in a slightly different portfolio. So let's pick this project here. And we're going to go and run a portfolio report against it. Now, part of portfolio reports, we can have tables of property information, or property information can feed tables and can feed charts coming out into our report. So let's have a look at what we're going to produce. We'll do this one. That'll have some preset things as part of the saved report specification. We'll have a look at what it's going to produce, and then we'll see how this is doing that. Because there's a few changes in here that we want to look through. The notable ones, or the primary couple, are about totaling and about attributing values to the charts. So let's look at totals first. Here we've got a typical table bringing back property information, and we can see here the alias is coming through again. In fact, this one we can see hasn't been aliased, so it's coming through in its unaliased form with an underscore. Other ones here have been aliased and are coming through nicely. So we've always been able to put a total row in, and that's totaled numeric fields. So we can total up the budget values, the count of particular benefits, etc., and those total onto the bottom row. What we've been unable to count or total is textual content. Now this is now possible to do. You can put a total on, and if it recognizes it as being text of some sort, it will do a count type total like this. So we've got 1 week, 2 exceptional, 2 acceptable, 1 insufficient, and it's worked its way through that table, matching up the identical text. This of course works very well when you're using pick lists, as we are here for status, so that you can get absolutely the same things. If it's an open text field, you can still put a total on it, but if everybody types in something different, you'll get lots of 1 items. So a little forethought is required really to get that to work very well. Up here on the charts, we've had pie charts and bar charts. We've had those for a while, and they will work very well. The keys, we've done something interesting with the keys here. So you can now on your key have the count, and you can have, or the value. So in this case it's a count because it's a pie chart. It's a count type of activity, and it works out the percentages for you. This one over here, which is a numeric value. We could have had the numeric value as well, but we've chosen just to have the percentage here. So we're seeing the percentage of the total represented by each section. And so you can have on the key no values, or you can have percentage complete, you can have the actual value, or you can have a combination of the two. And so we've got a combination of the two here. Here we've got the value, here we've got the percentage, here we've got the value again. Now you can also choose when you're creating these, because sometimes, you know, on a pie chart it's pretty straightforward how big the pie is going to be in terms of width of the image that you're using here. But what you can now do is either have them built in as they are here to the size of the image, or you can have it create a table and then it will automatically create a key that's the same size, because sometimes these elements here can be quite long and they don't really fit properly in the space. So a few new options on the form for dealing with that. So let's go and have a look at one of those. We've got benefit budget value here, and we can see we've got a chart running which is doing show chart, show title, show key, and we've got values on the key. We don't have percentage on the key on this one, and we're not doing key as a separate image. If we were doing key as a separate image, it would create another identical image below with the key dedicated to that. So if you have very long project names, you can still fit them in nicely. So that's some extra options in here, just a little bit more flexibility about how you lay out this content. We're finding people putting, you know, 50, 100 projects sometimes in portfolios. You can get a lot of data in these things, so you need to be able to tailor the division of usage between keys, how big you make the image, and then how you scale it for presentation and all those sorts of things. The other thing in here is we're also seeing customers taking advantage of portfolio reporting in a slightly different way. So they're often having a project type, a method type, just for dealing with portfolios. So you've got the actual projects which are doing all the projecty data things, and then you have an instance which is essentially a portfolio aggregation method. You've got a place where you bring together all the information for that portfolio, particularly around reporting usually. So it appears as a project, you can navigate to it, but it won't have all the individual project data there. It'll just be a place where you can maybe store a few notes, have a portfolio if you want to level risk and issue register or things of that type, and where you will then store the reports from the portfolio that have been created. Now, because that sits essentially as a project in the portfolio, it can also then be included in this sort of analysis. It would produce a row for it here because it's a project. Now, in those circumstances you don't really want it, and therefore here in the options new tab you can say when you're running this analysis, exclude all projects that contains the word portfolio, like that, and that will take that particular agglomeration combination type project out of the results table. Pretty straightforward thing to do. You can have an exact match if you want to, name for a particular thing, but this sort of rule would then make it quite generic. So if you always use portfolio X activities, you know, portfolio Y activities, you'll be able to search for those or exclude those consistently across any particular portfolio that you happen to be running. We've also made some changes to colour tables here as well. So previously when you were doing a count type of analysis, so here we had a benefit analysis, you would only get a pie chart produced when it had a colour table associated with the particular thing you were counting on, so that it used the items in the colour table to bin the data across. So it would look down here and say we've got ones called insufficient, weak, acceptable, etc., and it would then look in the data from the various projects and drop them into these colour bins to produce the pie chart. So if you didn't have a colour table, you wouldn't get an output chart. Now, if you don't have a colour table, it produces one automatically based on the data it finds. Now that means you don't get any ordering to them. Here it goes round in the order specified in the colour table, and you know what colours you're going to get against them. So we can have red against unacceptable, for example, as we've got here, or insufficient as we've got here. So you get a little bit less control, but you at least immediately can see what's happening, and you can then go into the colour table area. So we can come to the colour table for the. In fact, let's come to one of these other things like here. You come into colour table, and then you can get it to generate a colour table from the values. So it'll go through, and of course it'll do it even for values if you want to, although that's not such a normal thing. But it will generate from what you've got in here for you. So you can then tweak and change that, and obviously change the order of them and change the colours of the things that it's produced. So it just helps you get up and running that bit easier with the colour table activities. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk to about properties. Properties are being used extensively by people now, and they're collecting a whole range of different things from spreadsheets, as well as the standard ones from plans and things from their own system project properties. Now, as they are becoming much more prevalent, one of the places where they're really useful is in determining projects into portfolios. And we've had portfolio rules for a while, but they were a bit simplistic. So that's been had a massive makeover in terms of how it works. So let's go back and have a look at some of those bits. So here I've got the portfolio we were looking at earlier, which is a set of projects, and we saw all the various date bits for them. Here we've got a portfolio called late projects, and this is just showing me projects where the baseline finish date is earlier than the planned finish date. So we're running beyond the original baseline finish date. And it's able to do that using portfolio rules. It looks through all the projects in the system and says, show me ones that meet that condition. So that's done using rules. So if we come here to if we come here to our portfolio, let's open that project, go and look at our portfolio rule. We can see that that's what that's doing. This form has been laid out a little bit differently now. So here we can see, we can choose the particular types of data we want to see in this table, and we can see whether we see all projects or whether we see projects that only meet the rules that are saved. So here we've got our rules. We can have, like we did before, a series of rules, and actually these can be ticked on and off. So you can have a whole set of rules and then just activate or deactivate them as you require to get that combination of data together. So here we can see this particular rule. It's called late, and it allows us to compare a property. So we choose the property from the properties list, and we then determine what sort of information this property is. Is it a text string? Is it a number? Is it a date? Now previously we couldn't use dates at all, so the usage of dates here is new. We can have a number of different comparison operators, ands and ors, if we want to, depending on the type of rule we want to build. And so here we're going is less than the current planned finish date, and so we're comparing a property to another property. We could have compared our property to a date, in which case we could have looked for a date here, we could have looked for a specific date, or we could have looked for now plus or minus a period in terms of hours, days, weeks, months, years, etc. So in terms of dates, we can compare a date against a specific date, a comparison date, a different property date. When we're comparing a property which is a number, that number can be compared against another fixed number, or it can be compared against another property which is a number. So for example, we could have only projects in this portfolio where the benefits value is greater than the budget cost, or less than the budget cost for overspending projects. So these sort of combinations of property against property again make this a much richer possibility because previously we could only compare a text or a value against a constant, which was a little bit limited in terms of, yes, you could find all the projects that were greater than 500,000, but now we can find all the projects that are greater than 500,000 are running late and may not meet their benefits values. So a lot more sophistication here in terms of how we manage that, and because we see people likely to build more sophisticated sets of rules into here, you can also then save those rules, and then you can load them onto another new blank portfolio and tweak them slightly, so you can have comparisons between something and something slightly different. You don't have to change the rule and try to remember which projects are in the portfolio. You can jump from portfolio to portfolio and see how those have been applied. In this case, we're just going to have a look at one other to see those combination of rules together in the same place. So we'll come to this portfolio here, which has its rules, and this is using perhaps one of the more traditional types of things where we've got lots of comparisons to constants. We've got plan open risk greater than 3, plan open risks greater than 5, and contains in the name new. So here we've got a compound rule set. They're all perhaps simpler type of rules, but you can see how you can bring all those things together, and of course you could deselect one, see what effect that has on the list of projects that start to appear. So as we move each thing backwards and forwards, we see that things will come in and out of the list. So here we've narrowed it down further. So these rules are really useful. Just as before, you can apply your rule now when you want to, when you finish this process, or you can apply your rule to filter the projects that are in the current portfolio when you're actually using it. So when we come to select projects, so we come into our location here, and if I want to see exactly which ones are in there, I can just run the portfolio rules. It'll run through all that data and just confirms to me that there are just these two projects. If something else had just gone overdue, it would now be appearing in the list. So really quite useful for dealing with large numbers of projects, and making sure that you're not constantly chasing around picking up particular things, but the system's doing that for you. And the last particular thing I wanted to look at here is some extra sophistication in how we allow navigation through the interface. So let's go and have a look at an example project. So we've got a project here which is using a slightly different method template. Now for some time we've been able to have buttons that take us to processes and buttons that take us to tools, menu items, and we've had ones for a while that allow us to go and run a report. So this button here will take me to project report, and it opens the project report form, and if I want to run a particular type of report, I can then go and load it as a specification, assuming I know which one I want, and then press run, and it will run for me. Now that's great if you have a bit of understanding of the system. If you're not really very familiar with the system at all, you need to you need to work out what you're doing there and which report to select and all those sorts of things. So what we've done is allowed the navigation rule that we put on these buttons to have an extra bit of information, which is so not for every type of button, but for certain ones it will load with a particular report definition associated with it, or with a particular data range or view associated with it. So here I've added a button to this method which says post a report, and when I run it, it not only opens the form, but it opens the form with the poster report loaded, irrespective of whatever last report I ran. Normally it opens that form with the last report you ran, and then we can see it immediately runs the report for me. So as an occasional user, a sponsor, senior user on the project, you can come into the project, press the button, and you're going to get that report come up straight away with what people wanted you to see, because it's managed through the report specification and layout of that. And when we're finished with what we're looking at, we can come back to here if we want to, and we could then start to tweak around with this. Don't have to do that. We could in fact close it and go back and carry on working on something else. In fact, we could have a bank of these things set up that take us to particular things. We can also do exactly the same when we're inputting system project properties. So you come to this grid for inputting your properties, and it comes in with a particular view set. So normally it would just come here and it would be the last view you used, and if you wanted to edit something else you'd have to go and find the standard view that you're interested in and bring it up. Then you could enter the data, but now you can add that extra argument to the instruction to load this form with the particular view you want. So it's going to bring different people in from a different button straight to the thing you want them to update. So again, just helping get people in touch with the things you really need them to do nice and quickly, and that's going to be different for every customer, so you can build that into your method however you want. Okay, so that was the latter sections here. The previous tour focused on the new features in the browser app. All of these features are available across the multi-user platform, Small Team, Enterprise and Live editions, and that's including into Live Edition. So although we've been looking at things in the Windows application, that application uses web services, so you can run it over the internet back to the host server at Live Edition should you want to. Any questions around that, just drop us an email or contact us any other way, and we'll be glad to help you with that or anything else you want to know about Project in a Box. Thank you very much.